Hello, this is your good friend Colette with his characteristically messy hair on the windswept beaches of Tarifa, Spain. Behind me, you can see a bunch of pillboxes. And from what I've heard, actually, something surprised me when I came here last time, about 5 years ago. These were not to fend off necessarily an Allied invasion, but rather a Nazi invasion. And then I asked myself the question, why is fascist Spain worried about getting invaded by fascist Germany or fascist Italy? Interesting question. Well, you see, fascists are very, very bad at one particularly important thing: working with people outside of their country and culture. And I think this is really just something very, very clear from the course of World War II. Because it seems like World War II was just full of fascist nations trying to inopportune situations and then not helping their allies when it's something that actually would have been strategically viable for both. And in some cases, siding with the allies entirely, as was the case with Francoist Spain, or at least a sort of like biased neutrality. So, a characteristic feature of fascism, of course, is nationalism. Nationalism itself, one might say, is inherently a fascist feature. Or at least it's a quality very, very common, impossible to miss in fascism. That this one culture, this one nation, is worth more, and the individuals of it are worth more than anyone else. The second thing is, the nations of this valuable and important individual nation are also expendable in the interest of the nation. This is why I say Israel is fascist, because it embodies this trait very, 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 very severely. So, fascist Spain was happy to receive a lot of aid from fascist Italy and the fascist Germany, aka, I gotta censor myself now. I don't want to get banned from 2 YouTube accounts for superficially talking about history. But during the war, during the big one, not the little one, the Civil War, it was actually pretty big, so the Spanish kind of were bribed by the British to stay out or even support them instead. This is not surprising, because loyalty to one's allies is not known as a particularly fascistic trait. And secondarily, Spain had a lot more to gain from staying close to the allies, particularly the British, and with the intermediary of fascist Portugal. Britain itself, at this time, under Churchill, wasn't far from fascist, or may have indeed been fascist. Their interest in Churchill's interest in imposing the Nazis was more about his fear of losing British power to a stronger adversary, rather than any sort of ideological accoutrement with the Nazis. Churchill himself admitted he quite respected the Nazis, and he wished that something like that would be accomplished in Britain. And while he was quieter about that as the war years progressed, I don't think his beliefs really strayed too far from that. But he was able to leverage some of his fascist credibility to get on side with the Spanish. And there were intersecting, diplomatic missions in World War II to Franco's Spain. The Nazis were wanting to collect their bill, and the British were wanting to offer free donuts. Guess which one came out on top? But it's interesting to imagine what if the fascist nations of World War II had collaborated more with each other. let's say that the Japanese were able to launch an attack on the eastern portion of the Soviet Union. At the same time, the Nazis were putting into effect Operation Barbarossa. Or if the Spanish Navy was able to cut off the Mediterranean from Allied shipping using its, effective force in combination with the Italians, one may not know. It's a question of how close these conflicts actually were. It seems to me, in hindsight, that given how many disadvantages, that some of the fascist nations did incredibly well. But of course those disadvantages were promoted with excellent use of force. The Nazis were never able to claim the fields of Baku. Why? Because of Stalin and his iron-willed leadership, and his marshals like Zhukov, and the sacrifice of everyday Soviet citizens who threw themselves into the meat grinder for the motherland. And of course the partisans, who made life on the Eastern Front such a hell that Germans would throw themselves at the Western Front, preferring to die anywhere else than be captured in the East. But these are just hypotheticals. As I walk this beautiful, probably loudly annoying beach in Tarifa, I wonder what the world would have looked like if the wrong side won that war. Probably not so far off